Today, we're talking about risk to your accounting firm from all those scary places in the digital world. Yep, cybersecurity. But it's not all scary here today. We're also going to talk about the country and the people that I've had like the biggest crush on forever. Yep, it's the land down under and all of those Aussies. I mean, why is like Australia like the coolest freaking country in the world with like the funnest people? Well, guess what? We're getting into all of that here today on Drink Why You Think, the happy hour conversation. Yeah, between a couple of guys building their firm in really weird ways. I'm your host, Kenji, without my co-host, Matthew, here today. Yep, he's letting me run wild. And this episode is sponsored by Practice Protect. Create more trust and reduce your risk by using Practice Protect's all-in-one platform that helps you control access to client data, manage your firm's risk, all while staying in compliance. Practice Protect, the only cybersecurity built for accounting firms that supports over 6,000 cloud applications. It is used by over 15,000 accountants worldwide. Practice Protect. And my guest, you like that?
Done well.
And my guest here today is none other than the Practice Protect CEO, Jamie Beresford. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. Tell us who you are, and most importantly, what are you drinking today?
What am I drinking? Well, you've done such a good intro. I don't think I can top that. My name's Jamie. But what I'm drinking today is Little Creatures Pale Ale from Western Australia, a place called Fremantle. It's a coastal area near Perth, the capital city, and it is my favorite beer in the whole world. In fact, I tried to post some of this to you guys for this episode, but they wouldn't let me. It's that special. They wouldn't let it out of the country.
Oh, shame. That's terrible. That's terrible. I'm not drinking anything that cool. I'm drinking it's the Hippie hopped pale ale. It's another from McCall Brewing in Idaho. Yes, if you've been following along, you will know that I've got like a connection in Idaho who keeps sending me beer. We're going to try this out. But also, before I do my cheers, Jamie, even though I don't have an Aussie beer with me, I do have, hold on, especially for those watching along.
Oh, nice.
I've got my 7 Mile Brewing hat. That's
courtesy of Clayton Oates.
Clayton Oates, our mutual buddy, sent to me. So this will have to be as close as I can get to this, but cheers, mate.
Cheers.
By the way, for listeners and viewers, Jamie is currently drinking with us at 6 a.m. That's just kind of how it works. You know,
I train for this, Kenji.
Practice. He's a professional. He is a true professional. Oh, that's pretty good. I like that. Also, it's likely, Jamie, and we'll talk about this a little bit later and get into it, why Aussies are like the most fun people. He and I actually have stacked up a few other beers here just in case. He and I, when we tend to get together, get 3 more. I've got a few more with me as well too. So I have a feeling that we may get into these as well. It's going to get interesting. All right, let's start a little professionally, just a little bit professionally, and then we'll kind of get into some more fun stuff. But I do think accounting firm owners are going to be enticed by the headline of this podcast, and I think some of the things that actually you are expert in around like security, because people do freak out about this. I'll share candidly at Acuity, like we had an issue this week that we were kind of sounding alarm bells. I mean, this stuff happens a lot. All right, so here's my first question for you, Jamie. What's like the most common security area or security risk that you see that most accountants have they haven't addressed yet? Like what's like the easy, like, oh yeah, most folks have not like dealt with it. What do you and your team typically say?
Two-factor, like having no multi-factor across everything that covers, and having like a single identity where all team members have a single identity that they're given with a set of credentials. There's this kind of, I think there's this, app sprawl happening out there where there's just so many portals and apps and logins and banks. and not having a single point of access around all of that's probably to sum it all up. That's how I'd sum that up.
So, okay, no two-factor authentication. People using those same credentials. I mean, I've been guilty of both those in the past. Does it matter, getting a little bit in the weeds, on what kind of two-factor authentication you use? Is just using it, the one that come over SMS, usually fine? Or do you need to use some of these authenticator apps, or what's kind of ideal?
The best one I like is holding the QR code up to the screen.
Yep.
So then you don't have to type anything. But look, it's up to the user. It's up to as long as there's a third factor, you're covered, and something that uses your mobile device. That's ultimately what's going to reduce that risk by a lot.
Speaking of that, and going a little off track here, the last time I think you and I were together, I believe it was New Orleans. I believe it was fairly late in the evening on Bourbon Street. Do you know that I had my phone stolen? Do you remember this?
I remember you were leaving, and on the way home, I actually gave you a heads up, and that's funny for me. In the US, I was like, because you were leaving and waiting for an Uber. I said, "Hey, keep your eyes up." I think I said,
"Yeah, I had my phone stolen. Anyway." But I say all that in that, like, I had to go through that of getting the new phone and then getting all my two-factor authentication put back on my phone. I was like, oh man, that was a little bit of a nuisance, but I think it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, kind of getting two-factor back on the phone. But that did freak me out a little bit, losing my phone. Let me flip that question a bit on security. Are there maybe places that accountants worry too much about from a risk standpoint, that maybe it's just overblown, or maybe it's like that you look at and say, hey, that's not as big of a deal as you think, things that people get all worked up about? Do you see that as well too? Yeah.
Yes. Accountants are all about their client, right? So when they talk about security, it's all about the client data that's in QuickBooks Online or wherever that data is stored.
Right.
The devil is in the email, Kenji. It's all about breaching a mailbox. When somebody gets in, for starters, right, if they're using Office 365 or G Suite, they're pretty easy to breach. Well, not easy, but everyone uses those platforms around the world, not just accounting firms. So there's a lot of intel and a lot of knowledge built around how to breach those platforms. But once you get into somebody's mailbox, you can learn a lot about them. You can find, go through their sent items, see who their trusted people are, initiate conversations on their behalf, reset passwords to other applications that send an email. There's so much you can do once you get into somebody's mailbox. And that is the new frontier. It's a fundamental shift. I guess we've been doing this since 2016, and cybersecurity has been growing. But 2022 and post-COVID, I believe, has been a fundamental shift towards email. And not just email. Previously, there was more of a spray and pray approach to hacking and targeting. You would breach a mailbox and just spray an email to all of the contacts and entice them into clicking something. And it's embarrassing, right? You might get, a bit of impact for that for a few days, a bit of a freak out. But now there's this more targeted approach where a human is going through and researching who you know and who you talk to and exploiting those, initiating conversations and coercing people into either transferring funds or divulging access to sensitive data, or doing things like modifying invoices. So setting a rule in Outlook so you're capturing an invoice before it's been sent, modifying the bank details of a PDF, letting it send, and these sorts of things. It's called business email compromise, BEC. It is the new frontier. So long answer to a simple question. The devil is in the email.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know that people think about that often. Like, yeah, it's kind of email. I got a bunch of garbage in there. Like, what's really valuable? There's some old newsletters and some spam. But I guess your point is there really is so much information that someone could pick through. And then
and you can assume someone's identity.
Yeah, entirely. Interesting. Okay. making me nervous. There's lots of all these threats out there, man. All these threats. Okay, so you said that was called BEC?
Yep, BEC.
BEC.
So
interesting.
Yeah. And the payload, which is what they do once they get in, you got to think of it, it's a bit like a car accident. When someone has a car accident, well, let's do it different. If someone has their house broken into, the first thing people ask is, what did they steal? What did they do? Whereas really the question to learn from is, how did they get in?
Yeah. Yeah.
So everyone wants to see, everyone stares at the car accident. Everyone wants to know what the impact was, but thinking about how they got in, and that comes back to that multi-factor. Because if you've got a second factor over your email and you're making it easy for everybody to log in and access that information by having a single identity across a whole firm,
yep,
you're going to stop that entry method.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's where, again, I know we used to do that in certain spots. I've used these accounts that a bunch of people had access to because you're always worried about, well, what if so-and-so's on vacation? Or what if we need to back them up and support them? It used to be, all right, we're going to create an email account. We'll share some credentials, and it's going to be used across a lot of things. And I think many firms probably did that historically as kind of a workaround to be able to make sure. I know for us, when we were doing some of that, we were trying to make sure that information didn't get siloed, like, oh, only this person knows about this particular issue. So we need multiple people to have access, but then you realize you've kind of opened up the door for all these things. Plus, those accounts tend to kind of be virally attached to so many clients. So if there is a breach, it's kind of across many, many more clients and instances than you expect. So that is something we've had to do away with in the past, but it's tough. Some people build workflow around that and they're like, am I really going to change all that? Because now it's going to get more difficult. But yeah, I guess that'll all it takes is having something like this happen or knowing another firm it happened to, and that'll scare the hell out of you. That'll freak you out for sure. All right, let's move. Let's keep moving. Let's stick in the profession, but I want to pose a question to you here a little more broadly about the accounting profession, less about security. But I for so many years, there's this feeling in our profession, or I've heard people talk about that in Australia, most accounting firms are like 5 years ahead of us US firms. They're like, oh, in Australia, it's like the future of accounting over there. It's, that's where the future is. Is that a load of crap, or is that actually fairly accurate? I'm super curious. I mean, you're there, so you may have a bias, but like you've actually been back and forth quite a bit to the States. Firms all over the world. Is Australia the land of the future of accounting?
Yes, but there's a couple of caveats there. First of all, the banking and tax system is far simpler.
Yeah.
And secondly, comparative to the US, it's a peanut farm. We got the same amount of accounting firms in Australia as we do in Northern California. So I don't buy into the whole Australian cockiness of like, hey, we're so far ahead of you. I can't believe you're still using checks. Because it's like, you guys are 30 times the size, and that's a bigger ship to move.
True.
And the banking and tax, all our tax is regulated from the federal government. There's no state and local tax. So it simplifies everything.
Yeah.
So, there's a reason. It's not like the US is holding back or stuck in the past. It's a bigger ship to move, and it's moving.
Yeah.
But
you see it moving. You see it moving closer. You feel like
100%.
Oh, really?
Most definitely. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was different in Australia though, right? Because the concept of cloud was almost a state of mind. It was pushed by Xero. The incumbent, the equivalent to QuickBooks, was a company called MyOb that was delivering really bad service at the time. It kind of, got pretty cocky as the main game. Xero came along and this browser-based concept, and accountants just flocked to it. And it was almost like cloud is a state of mind. Cloud accounting is like everyone wants to be cloud, and everyone is cloud now. But the US has been different, right? Because QuickBooks have got QuickBooks Online.
Right.
And it hasn't quite happened the same way, but it's definitely happening.
That's interesting because I agree with you. I do think it's happening. I'm a big believer that Xero played a large part in getting some of the cloud adoption going here in the US, but it was harder, to your point. I think they were helpful and they came and pushed QuickBooks. They've done so I think the QuickBooks product is a very, very online product, it's a very, very good one, but I think it benefited from competition here in the US of Xero coming into space. But the one thing I feel like is different in the way that you described the way things were when Xero came to market is there was still here in the US a great deal of resistance to the cloud, like almost fear of the cloud. It almost sounds like in Australia, there was like, people were like, yes, the cloud is here. They were excited or they thought it was cool. Whereas it felt like it took longer here in the US. People didn't think it was quite as cool. They were more freaked out by it. So I don't know why that is. I'm not sure why.
I know why it is.
Yeah, tell me.
We've only got 200 years of history. We don't have as deep a connection with our past as the US does. It's a cultural thing. You know, my experience is we got a very simple history. Like Australia, British came, that was it, 200 years ago. We're not as, I think in the US, it's like, well, this is how it was always done. This is how George Washington did it. And there's a certain cultural thing about checks. You know, I do business with you. We sign the agreement. I sign a check and I hand it to you. There's a certain tradition in that. And Australia doesn't really have that pride in its history and pride in its background, I think. And that's why Australia's moved so rapidly to the future.
That is interesting. I could see that for sure. I mean, there is a sense when you talk to those who are trying to move to the cloud or have been resistant to it of we've been a successful firm. We've done it this way for many years. We're still successful. I mean, there are still a lot of people using desktop accounting software out there, which seems mind-blowing, but these are successful firms who have actually done relatively well. So I think there is some sense of tradition. And it's interesting. I think that US, we always think we're the new kids on the block. Like, oh, Europe's been around forever and so many years. And I guess we don't, in a typical US style, we don't think about others that much. We're like, we forget about you guys. Yeah, you guys have been around half as long, really, kind of as us, and probably makes you more adaptable to change because there's just not that long tradition there. So
sure. Interesting. Yeah, in a market a 30th of the size, though, I'd say there's probably more cloud accountants in the US than there are in Australia. Even though it's probably only this would be a Blake Oliver question, but 10% of the market, 20% of accounting firms, and CAS and bookkeeping firms are moving pretty rapidly.
They are, yes.
CPA firms are held back by the tax software.
Yeah.
You know, there's really only a handful of cloud-based tax apps, and that's going to take a lot of time.
We waited quite a while before launching our tax team for that exact reason, because we just could not find good cloud-based tax software. And in fact, I said, I know that we needed to create a tax team, but we weren't going to do it until there was cloud software. Because I thought there's no way, it's not going to persist for too much longer, but I just couldn't even bear the thought of having to go on desktop or server-based software. And so it took a while until Intuit put out their PTO, ProConnect Tax Online. And we thought, well, it's not perfect. There's missing some features of some of the other tools, but man, there was no way in hell that we were going to go on to some kind of desktop server base. So that's, I don't think I've heard it quite described that way that you just did, Jamie, but that makes total sense to me. That's those who had a tax component, you're going to be held back because almost all of them are still using some form of a server-based desktop software. So, okay. We're figuring out some of the differences here between US and Australia.
Yeah. And it's such a dramatic shift. Once you go full cloud, all of that complexity goes. Like from an IT perspective, from a tech guy perspective, you basically need a new IT guy, right? Because the guy that looks after server-based apps, he's talking about hardware and he's talking about hosted servers and all of that sort of stuff. But all of that's gone. Almost. It's still there, 10%. And then it's about understanding workflow, actually understanding what the users do on top of that platform.
So is your solution built only for cloud, or do you also touch some desktop and server-based machines?
No, we touch desktop as well. So
Okay.
the whole on the cybersecurity side and practice protect side. But bear in mind, we've got a managed services company as well, and so we do IT for accounting firms, and for cloud-based firms predominantly. You know, if you have a significant amount of server footprint, we're probably not the guys for you, but. Because the game completely changes. You don't really need a traditional tech guy anymore. You need somebody that's more workflow oriented, someone that's good at Zapier, somebody that actually knows what actually happens on top of all these applications.
Right. It's interesting. Okay, so another more specific Xero question. And by the way, the same thing's happening as it always happens with you. I feel like beers go down a lot faster whenever I'm hanging with you for some reason. we're going to rate our. Hey, ladies and gentlemen who are listening to the podcast, we may be rating our beers today by number consumed, not by the. We're going to go quantity versus quality is what we might go with here. So, okay,
down the hatch.
I get into my next one with you here. So. This year, 2023, Xero made the announcement that Xerocon's only going to be in Australia, Sydney, I think, to be specific. So should U.S. accountants consider making that flight and coming on over? Like, what would you say? Would you be like, forget it, it's too long, don't bother? Or would it be like, nah, come over and have your mind blown and just get ready for the biggest party? Like, I don't know. This has been a little bit of a conversation amongst some other friends of mine who are US-based accountants and firm owners of like, all right, what do you think? Should we maybe make this our year to go visit a bunch of our friends like you and Clayton and others and Heather Smith and whoever else over there? Like, should we come to, what's your pitch? Yay or nay?
Mate, it's a blessing in disguise for you guys because you're going to come and you're going to see a total different vibe and learn so much. Sure, it's a smaller market, but it is thinking differently. And anyone who makes that trip is going to see something completely different. It's not going to be just another Xerocon. Like, put aside all the fun we'll have and all the places we're going to take you and all the things we're going to show you. It's going to be something you'll talk about for 10 years minimum.
Whoa. I mean,
but you will get it. You know, yeah, sure, it's a long flight. But it's not that bad, right? You just sit there. If you've got all these points left over from COVID, you fly up the front. It's not too bad. Get here, but you will learn a lot, and you'll get to see a completely different perspective. And I always think in business, sometimes being different is being better. You know, all you got to do is be a little bit different and see some different perspective, and it can really change the way. So. My point is, you know, going to another Xerocon in the US, it's going to be easier to get to, but it's just another Xerocon. It's just another conference. Whereas you come down under and you see what firms are doing down here, you're going to learn a lot.
Interesting. Did you feel that way when you came to what was your first Xerocon US? Was it this year?
Yeah.
Last year? So New Orleans, was that your first time coming to a Xerocon?
It was my first Xerocon, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess pretty dramatically different from what you've experienced in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, 100%. Just we're talking to firms, different stages, but way more fun for me. I love the US. You know, if it was business-wise, I would have stayed. I lived there for a year in Colorado, and purely commercially, it's 100% more fun. Australia's a small market, has its limitations. But from a life perspective and family, unfortunately, that was what tipped the scales.
Tipped the scale to bring you back.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I feel like that gives some momentum when we think about U.S. folks coming over. I feel like, my head was definitely in the let's learn some new things for sure. But I'm also like, man, I just feel like whenever I'm with Aussies, like, it's just a fun time to be had. I just feel like I've yet to meet someone from Australia, and it's not been a huge pool of people, but like, they're always fun. They're always, out for a good time. And I'm like, okay, let's say I go and maybe the content's not great. I feel like no matter what, I'm going to have a good time if I were to go to Xerocon Australia.
Clayton and I are already planning it. We're coming to Accounting Salon to lay the groundwork.
Oh, yes.
We're not promoting businesses we're not sponsoring as our businesses. We're sponsoring a Xerocon Australia.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. I'm 100% down for that then. Okay. I mean, man, I'm super okay. I got to make. I'm going to come off this podcast and start making some travel plans. I'm already feeling that. That's in August, I believe. Late August is when Xerocon Sydney, and I assume Sydney seems like a great city. I mean,
Sydney's awesome.
Yeah,
one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But we'll do some tours as well. We'll have a look around.
Oh, very nice, very nice. How far are you from Sydney?
I'm about 7 hours drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you drive? Would you
40
drive?
minutes fly? No, fly 40 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this brewery here is 7 miles by you, right? That's near.
Yeah, it is. It's at our local airport. So you go to the airport, you go early, and then you sit in the brewery instead of sitting in the terminal. It's great.
That sounds fantastic. Oh my gosh, that's so much. That's fantastic. No wonder you and Clayton know it well. All right, so I learned some interesting facts. I was looking this up. One of the ones about, again, I've always wanted, I think in my heart, to be an Aussie. I'm working on seeing if maybe they'll give me dual citizenship. So maybe I'll have to, but like I learned that I saw this online. If you were to visit, it said one new beach in Australia every day, it would take you 27 years to see them all. Like literally, you could live on the beach, a different beach every single day. I mean, I guess I was thinking about that. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I mean, how in the world? I'm like 365 times 27. There's that many freaking beaches. But then I'm like, then again, Australia is freaking huge. So
yeah,
it's like, does everybody live on the beach in Australia?
Yeah. 85% of Australians live within 20 kilometers of the coastline. It's all around the outside.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, see, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair for us. I mean,
hey, I got a question for you.
Bring it.
If we finish talking, we can talk about Oz in a bit. What intrigued me about Acuity was, I think it was last year we were having a conversation and you engaged. You've got a specialist HR person.
Yep.
I believe you're at around about 80 staff when you brought that person on.
Yep.
Tell me more. How's that evolved since then, having a specific HR person?
It has been game changing. Like it has been, in fact, I was talking about this recently. So we were probably even a little bit bigger than that, Jamie. We were probably a little over 100 people when we brought her on. We're now about 150 if you count all of our team members who are in the Philippines and in the Caribbean. But we went way too long before we hired someone. In fact, you and I are both part of an organization that's been very helpful for each of us, Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO. And a friend of mine at EO is an HR consultant. Her name's Teresa Murphy. And I said, Teresa, I feel like we probably need someone in HR. And she asked how big we were. And I said, I don't know. We have a lot of part-time people, but 100 or so. And she kind of looked at me and thought, you don't have anybody in HR? And I said, no. She goes, yeah, we need to get you somebody. And so we did. And it was like immediately we started seeing benefit. And I think the ways that we saw them most immediately were, I've always been pretty good at relating to team members. I'm good on the culture side. And I thought HR was just like, you got to be rah-rah, you got to be, but there's so much compliance. There's so much, how do we get the best benefits? How are we thinking about people's growth and developments? How are we giving people feedback into how they're performing? And Amber is her name. Amber is our HR manager. She's actually, we're celebrating like right here in January is like her 1 year she's been with us. I mean, we've put in performance management plans, development paths for people. And we finally started giving people a more clear understanding of how the organization works, which was, we didn't realize people were struggling. They're like, I don't know who to go to. We're getting kind of big. Do I talk to Kenji about this or Matthew, or who do I talk to? We had no clarity on that with people. They didn't quite understand what their growth path was. And you're only going to survive so long if you're not giving team members a clear idea about how they can grow and develop. Amber built that in. We didn't have a feedback mechanism to where we could give them feedback about how they were performing and where they could improve. And likewise, we needed a feedback mechanism where they could give feedback to us. And so she's built in monthly. We have data points and check-ins on where the team gets to give very, very clear anonymous feedback back to us about how are we doing as a firm. We'll pick specific areas like recognition or compensation and benefits each month and hone in on those and get feedback. And I mean, Jamie, it's crazy. We tell everyone, please fill those surveys out because I read through every one of them. They're fascinating, right? All of our ideas, especially our good ones, all come out of the team. I mean, we've got that many people. We want to get that hive mind and get ideas about what we can do to improve. And now we've got a mechanism that people are utilizing to give us feedback. We can go read it, look at it, absorb it as a management team, think about, okay, we need to address this issue, or we're seeing a trend here where we've got to fix some things. Before, you may get some anecdotal evidence, or you may run into somebody over Zoom or Slack and they may tell you something, but formalizing feedback loops has been game changing. And I think for both us and for those team members, and creating much more clear paths for growth. It's been, really been the best thing we've done easily in the past few years.
And having watched you guys grow, it was one of the last functions you put in place, obviously, behind sales marketing, behind a lot of other areas of the business. And that is not unusual. You very rarely hear a lot of discussion or talk around people. We go to events, right? We talk about revenue. What do you hear people say? I've got a new client that we're $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
It's all about revenue growth, growth. And if you look at it from an EOS perspective, they talk about external growth and internal growth. My question to you, Kenji, after 2 beers, is why do you think people never talk about people when it's such an important part of our business, right? Without people, you don't get things done. We've got these fixed cost assets, monthly fixed costs floating around in our business. You don't see a lot of learning and you don't hear a lot of conversation around it. Why do you think that is?
I think that when you're a smaller firm, and boy, I remember those days well. And some days I miss being a smaller firm because you as the firm owner yourself can go and deliver all the work. Now, I remember when people used to leave, take a better job, whatever it might be. I could usually go, okay, well, I'll pick up the slack and do that. I'll just do the work. It's kind of that commitment you make as an entrepreneur. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll go do it. Then you get to a certain size
and a certain age,
and a certain experience level, you're like, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do it. And then you're thinking, wait a minute. And to me, it's been very, very clear of the business we're in right now, Jamie, is much more about, I spend the majority of my time focused on, as I think the supply side of the equation, not the demand side. There's so much demand for accounting services. It's everywhere. There's so much work out there. And people who bicker or worry about competing with other firms, I think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous because there's so much work. There's more work than any of us can do. We have to figure out the supply side of the people side. And so it has been a little bit counterintuitive that people haven't said, I mean, I don't know really any other firms that are going, oh, I can't find clients. Clients are everywhere. People are firing clients. So the community's been very slow to react to it. Wait a minute. How much more could I grow and do if I focused most of my energy on getting good team members and retaining them? It's been one of those
and motivating them.
And motivated. It's been, and I'm starting to see that turn a little bit. I was just out last week with a bunch of other accountants. We did some skiing. We were out in Utah and Colorado, did a little bit of skiing, had to have some fun, but also we're at some events and things. And it's more of the conversation is starting to shift to this. But I think I hope it's not a little too late. I hope it's not a little too late. I literally just got a Slack message from one of my partners about a friend who just lost a bunch of people, and we're looking to go jump in and, hey, maybe how can we help out? There are people who are leaving the profession. There are people who are leaving the profession. There are people who are going out on their own. I mean, I don't think you can be a successful farmer. You're not going to be one unless you figure out a way to go and attract people, because otherwise, guess what? That means I and Matthew have to go back in there and do the work ourselves, which we could do. If we had to feed the families, we would do that. But we're not growing the business. And so I think that many of those, I think it comes down to many accountants think of themselves more as practitioners of accounting and not entrepreneurs and business people. They haven't made that shift. EO was a huge part of that for me, of thinking, I got to be a business, I got to build something here. And I think that's probably why being around other business owners who weren't services businesses or weren't accountants, who didn't hold onto their practice so dearly that it has to be me, I'm the only one who can do it, probably made an easier transition to thinking about, we got to focus on people and finding people much better than me to do the work. But I know a lot of practitioners now who just won't give up the work. They're like, no, I don't want to. I'm the best one to do it. My clients only want to talk to me. And I think that holds people back. I think that holds them back. And again, I say that our HR person, the other person that helped us too, Jamie, was we brought in not only an HR person, we brought in a dedicated recruiter, which all she does is just recruits for us. It's almost like on a
internal or consultant?
Internal for us. And so I think of it almost like in the same way of like, wait a minute, we invest in a sales team to go create a sales pipeline. Why would we invest in a recruiter to create a pipeline of candidates? And so we did that. I know a few other firms. I was talking to Nick Pascarosa, Bookkeeper 360, and a few others who've like, oh, that's another important role of getting a recruiter, like create a hiring pipeline, because it's like, we do that for sales. Why wouldn't we do that for recruiting as well too? So it's starting to happen, but I think it's been a little bit slow. And I think it's probably the firms who think more entrepreneurially like a business have made that leap a little quicker. Would you say that that's probably, it seems right?
Yeah. I don't know why that conversation tends to be such a boring one for generally.
Yeah.
It's not something people talk about. And I think it's the most critical part of business. Yeah, sure. But, I'm in cybersecurity. I'm a tech business. You're a accounting and bookkeeping firm, CAS firm. We're all in the people business.
All of us are.
And it's a really under-discussed topic in business, because without people, you're just going to end up doing all of the work yourself. And sure, that's fine when you're 35, but not when you're 20 years in at 55.
No, it's not.
Not that either of us are there just yet, but and that's why people are working, business firm owners are working 70 hours a week and burning out, because not investing in people. Really interesting topic. And talking about people, global teams is another part of the people conversation that both of our businesses probably have as a point of difference. How does your HR team member manage the international aspect of your teams?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked this, Jamie, because we're kind of just stepping into this. Just back in November, we made our first trip over to the Philippines. I know you've lived all over the world. I think you've been to the Philippines probably many times. And
4 years I lived there.
You live there. You live in Fiji, I think, right? You've been all over.
No, Bali.
Oh, Bali. Sorry, Bali. Sorry. One of these other beautiful island locations. Sorry, Bali. But when we went over, one of the important aspects of us to going over and spending time in the Philippines was one, we got to be face to face with our team. And there's just something about really being in the same room with them and breaking bread with them and having drinks with them and solving problems with them, but also in their community and in their culture, understanding that there are differences. And the differences from what we experience in the States, I thought were amazing. Some are more alike than I thought. Many are much different. And one of our takeaways coming off of that trip was saying, we have a wonderful new HR person, but I think we're going to need somebody locally, someone maybe in country, who really has a closeness to the culture and really how team members internationally think. And so our plan is, once our entity is all set up and we kind of go live with that this year, is to have a dedicated full-time HR person who probably works with our current US person to really kind of be that advocate for the team over there.
Localize.
I talked to our HR team member, and she's so bright and talented, and she's super interested in like learning more about what does HR, human resources, and supporting teams look like in the Philippines. But I also said, I'd like you to have a counterpart over there, somebody who you can trust and can get information from and you can share ideas with, but it's probably going to help there. So that's kind of our current thinking. We have not hired that person yet. We have not, our entity isn't fully established there yet. So what we've done is we've had such wonderful partners in the Philippines, like TOA and like Nimble, who we've been able to trust them to say, hey, we're going to lean on your practices for knowing how things work in country. But as people start coming to work directly for us, we're going to have to develop our own skill set of like understanding that a bit better. When we were there with that team in November, we said, that's what we're looking for. One of the reasons why we're doing this is we've gotten to a size and scale to where we have so many people here. We think we'd like to have you have a stronger voice in how we run the company. And me as a guy from the States, I may have some ideas about things, but I'm going to really need people there who are local to raise their hand and say, oh, this would be attractive to more team members, or this is a benefit that would help retain us better, or this is a work style that will help. And we're looking forward to having a bit more of that. But it's been, our partners over there have been instrumental for us getting there, but we're going to have to figure out that and develop that own muscle ourselves, I think. So.
Yeah, the compliance aspect goes through the roof as well. You mentioned earlier, HR manager handling the documentation and the formality of the process. Our experience, we've got 50 in PH, and our experience, we're having all sorts of dramas with they call it tardiness, lateness, and attendance. Yep. It wasn't until we started following, we're a very informal company, and I think, we're like, hey, you were late, why? What's going on? And, every company meeting, hey guys, put all these incentive plans in, until we started following their performance management process in the Philippines. They call it an NTE, a notice to explain. Yep. Until we started following that documentation process, which is a pain in the ass, right? Because you've got to complete these documents, issue them, have a meeting. And until we got a HR person on the ground that could go through that process, attendance turned around like that, engagement turned around like that. Yeah. It's all about the documents. That's our experience so far. And that
makes sense. That makes sense to me though, Jamie, because one thing we really have experienced, and I don't think I quite understood it until we got over there, is our team members in the Philippines really love to perform well. They love to, they've been amazing, but they've really liked to have very, like things like a process or very scripted out expectations, they really relate to. So being able to document something, I've told that before. It's
part of the culture.
Their culture loves that. Their culture really responds to that. Versus here in the States, man, don't document that. Just have a quick conversation. Tell me what's going on. That doesn't seem to resonate the same way as it does over there. Is that your same experience?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's my experience for sure. For sure. And
it's fascinating. I mean, I really loved being over there. We spent some time on Boracay, which was beautiful. A little bit of time in Manila. Just beautiful people, great country. I really enjoyed it. Where did you live when you were there?
In Manila, in the big smoke. Yeah,
the big smoke.
Yeah, you wouldn't live out your days there, but it was a good experience.
Yeah, it was a good experience. So interestingly, one other thing I've noticed is I feel like when I'm traveling, I'm always running into, if it's not someone local, it's someone from Australia. Like, is that a thing? Like, do Aussies
it's in our time zone, right?
Yeah.
Asia's our South America. It's in our time zone. It's a quick flight. It's a bit, and it's in our.
Yeah, but even beyond there, I feel like, I don't know. I always feel like Aussies are, I won't say everywhere, but not the biggest country in terms of population, but I always just feel like
Aussies travel more because our country is they call it the lucky country. It's an easy country to live in, but it's not as interesting and diverse. 88% of Australia is white Anglo-Saxon Australians.
Yeah.
And if you are the type of person that wants to experience more, you got to travel.
Interesting.
So I think it's a long way from the rest of the world, which is great. We've got, a very lucky situation, but growing up, it's a little bit boring.
Really?
Yeah.
There's only
people-wise, culturally, it's pretty
that makes
generic.
sense,
But there's
yeah.
no different accents. You go from one side of Australia to the other, it's the same accents, the same food. Everything's very simple in Australia, but if you want to kind of get out there, you got to travel. And Asia's a very easy place for us to travel because it's close.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That makes good sense. I mean, I think, and maybe that's why I'm drawn to it. I just think of like, it just, I don't know. I feel like the Australians I've met are very straightforward. They're just fun-loving people. They're exploratory. They get all over the world. They're always up for a good time. They're kind of fun-loving. I don't know. I'm always drawn to Australians for some reason.
Well,
So
we're drawn to you guys too, Kenji. You guys are the most informal people I've met. You and Matt. I feel like the other way I describe you as informal, and that's how Australians are. Yeah. Informal.
That's exactly informal. I think that's what probably resonates as well. Just being someone informal that we can hang out with. I'll maybe finish up with this before we rate our beers. And I'm expecting you to rate yours very high. I may actually see if I can crack into one more before, just to, we're literally on opposite times here. I want to at least be on our very first podcast that we've gotten into 3 beers. And we just there's nobody else I would prefer to do that with than you. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
I'm not going to ask you to say anything inappropriate, but because you have a few times taught me some amazing Australian sayings. Some of them are not appropriate for this podcast. Now that we're into our 3rd beer, I mean, what are okay? If I were to come to Xerocon this year, I'm just trying to prepare for any other good Aussie sayings or phrases, either to be prepared for or to try to work on so that I can, prove to other Australians, that I've studied up a bit on the culture. I don't know. What do you got for me? You always have some good ones.
Yeah, I don't know. You kind of need a situation to rattle them off. There's and some of them might be a little bit too informal for this.
We'll leave spiders out of it and things,
Yeah, generally we'll leave the spiders out. Mate, you're just going to have to come and check it out.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
How long should I come for? Like, what would be the ideal? Obviously I can't come forever, but like the minimum amount, if we were to say we're going to create the Kenji, Jamie, Clayton trip to Xerocon, you should budget at least bare minimum this many days. What would we tell
10
people?
days.
10 days.
10 days. That's like 3 for the conference.
Yep.
7 to travel, minimum 10 to 14.
10 to 14.
You can do 14, even better.
Even better. Okay. And do you have already a little bit of a sense of kind of like what we do? Oh yeah, I figured
it's been discussed. Yep. It's been discussed. So yeah, Sydney's a great city.
Okay.
For a capital city, just that harbour and the beaches and the amount you can do around there is pretty cool. So you'll get the cultural aspect, the people side of Australia, but also the nature, the beauty, the natural stuff. So
outstanding. What's
a very cool trip.
What's weather going to be like when we come in August? It's going to be, all right.
It's coming out of winter.
Okay.
Be all right.
Okay.
Be all right. So, mate, weather's so unpredictable these days. I don't think we can follow the norms now. It could be a drought. We could have bushfires. Weather's crazy everywhere in the world now.
But here's another one of these crazy. And again, you were out in Colorado, one of my favorite places in the world, just because I have family and such out there. I just came back, was doing some skiing and some stuff up there. I saw this correctly that like the Australian Alps, which I didn't realize there were such a thing, gets more snow than like the Swiss Alps? No, is that
Nah, it's
just
BS. Yeah, it's not real high. We got 2 mountains. They're all right, but nothing like Japan. Japan's the way forward.
Oh,
Yeah,
Northern
for us.
Japan. Oh man,
Yeah,
that's
that's the
some that's
closest. But you guys have got way more snow than us. We can't. We got beaches. We got waves. That's Australia. You don't go to Australia for snow.
no, just don't even bother. Don't even bother with it.
No.
And okay, so maybe one last thing. Best I hear where you're at. And remind me again the city that you're in.
I'm in Byron Bay, which is it's on the
Like
east coast.
famous.
It's yeah,
I mean, is there a better beach in Australia than like I hear that's considered
mate. Well, in my opinion, I'm 200 meters from the best beach in the world. So, so yeah, there's a lot of beaches, but Australia's just chockers full of beaches. There's, it's all about the beach. Everyone lives near the beach. Everyone surfs. Everyone, yeah. So there's beaches everywhere, but in my view, this is the way forward around here. This is a very cool location.
So I'm just hoping you and Clayton, especially in your new house, I know you're building, you and Clayton have got a lot of room there in the house for.
We do, mate. We got heaps of room. We were already talking about it, mate. We have got the gold star trip for you guys. We'll just see who's coming and we'll make it happen.
Beautiful.
It's
Beautiful.
always us going over there and your hospitality. It's going to be our turn, and we're pretty excited about that.
Okay. It's done deal. I've already decided. Three beers in. I'm going to go back here and like get on delta.com and just go ahead and book it. And
get on the mat.
Yeah, get on there. My friend, it is always, I mean, you're one of those people I feel like I've known for a long time. It's probably our common EO background. It's probably a number of things. I think you and I, when we first met, connected like instantly, and we're arms around each other, beer in hand, and just having a great time. And it's been something I know we've talked about having you on for a long time here. I had my Practice Protect sponsorship there kind of up front, but I would really tell other accountants listening to this, it's going to be unusual if you have team members within your company who can truly provide the protection and security that we need to provide for our own team members and for our clients. I really highly do recommend taking a look at what Jamie and his team have built at Practice Protect. Everybody in Australia, which you've already said is kind of somewhat the future of accounting, is using it. It's just a matter of time. These guys have started coming to the States here a little bit. Take a look at what they're doing. And what's the best way to reach out to you, Jamie? If people are like, you know what, I need to start making a better investment in my cybersecurity, what's the best way for people to either follow you or reach you? We'll make sure we add these to the notes. We'll put links, but how do you want to connect with people most likely?
Practiceprotect.com to engage with the business. I'm on LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com/Jamie Beresford. That's me. I'm not huge on social.
That's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing. You're a wise man for that. And you're going to be here in the States at Accounting Salon, and you usually hit a couple other events here in the States.
Yep. We'll be at 4 events in the US this year.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
excellent. I can't wait to see you. We'll make sure we find out which ones you're at that I'll get a chance to see you at. But okay, let's go, and I'm going to rate our beers. All of our audience listening, hopefully you remember where to go to rate your beer.
What was your beer again?
So my first one was the Hippie hopped pale ale. I'm going to rate that one. The other one I drank here, and I'll do a couple of them. I was drinking the Stein Gold out of Houston, Texas. Our friends from Keeper sent us this a couple of weeks ago. We drank it with them, and that's a good one I went back to. They sent me a lot of it, so I've been very thankful.
Ben and Ken? Ben and Ken.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kenny's a legend, mate.
Kenny's great. Ben,
such good value.
We had Ben on with us, and it's funny during our podcast. You can see Kenny is walking around in the background doing actual work while Ben's on there drinking with us. So it was great to have those guys on. This was from the Keeper guys, Ben and Kenny, legends. So I'm going to rate. Let me pull up the little screen share if this works. This is the Hippie hopped pale ale from McCall Brewing Company, from our good friend Alex Miles at FreshBooks, who works with Twyla. This was solid. It was pretty good. I'm going to give it. Well, it's not my favorite. I'm going to give it 3.75, but actually I'm going to bump it up to a 4 out of 5, just because, man, she keeps sending me so much beer, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you, Alex, for that. Remind me again. Tell me again the name of your beer, Jamie.
Little Creatures.
Little Creatures.
There it is, top.
There it is, top one there. Boom. Okay, you can rate this. If this is your absolute favorite, it should be well over 4. Actually, you rate it however the hell you want to rate this thing. You can see all the different point increments. You can go 5. We have 5 stars on here. We have.
Mate, I'll go 4, 4.5, 4.25.
4.25.
Yep.
The Little Creatures Pale Ale. Look at this. Fantastic. God,
good stuff. Good to see it there.
It is there. I mean, all over the world. We tell all of our people, hey, follow us, connect with us on Untappd, where we keep a track of all of our bad behavior. I hope it never gets pulled into a court case or anything of like, is this true that you guys have consumed this many beers? Yes, it is.
Well, I've had 3 now at 6 a.m. and now I've got to go look after my kids.
Yeah, it's Saturday.
It should be an interesting morning.
It should be. Now I'm at least starting my Friday evening, so at least for me,
you're set.
Yeah, I'm set. But you, sir, are a gem for coming on here, and I really appreciate it. It makes me really, really, really happy to see you and to get a chance to kind of hang out with you. I always love doing that. So, cheers to you, mate. Great to see you.
Cheers, Kenji. Good on you, mate.
And again, all of our listeners, please hit subscribe. Please give us some comments for what you'd like us to talk about next time here on Drink Why You Think. Cheers, everybody.
Say good day to Matt.
Will do.